Inside the Huddle is sponsored by Ohio Production Paint and Assembly Corporation. For your industrial painting needs, call OPAC at 419-582-2761 or visit them at 18 East Main Street in Osgood.
Hey readers and followers, we are in week 7 of Inside the Huddle preview. I'm Jake Dowling from the Evening Leader, Seth Kinker from the Minster Community Post, and it's playoff time, finally. Not as long as it usually is. We usually have to wait until week 11. We're about 4 weeks ahead, so with the pandemic and the shortened season. But St. Mary's, the number 8 seed, will play Greenville, the number 25 seed in the Division 3 Region 12 playoffs. The first round of the playoffs, St. Mary's will get to host, because it's the higher or the better seeded team will get to host. Minster will play Delphus Jefferson in the Division 6 Region 24. Yep. Is that right? Yep. And then New Bremen gets the bye week. They're lucky. The top 6 teams in each region get to get a bye week. They're in the number 3 seed in the Division 7 Region 28 playoffs, and they will play the winner next week. So we'll see how all that works out. But first we'll start with Minster and Delphus Jefferson. How does that game look for Friday?
Yeah. So first off, we'll kind of look back at Minster's regular season finale. They beat Parkway, another MAC program, 62-20 in the regular season finale. They had a 49-point first half, 35 points in that second quarter to really kind of take control. Offensively, they outgained them 506-229. One of the things, and I mean, that game was kind of just a summary of Minster's kind of really been struggling this year as a growing program, and then they kind of saw a lot of those things they've been working on each week. When I've been kind of talking to head coach Garen Stokes, you saw those kind of come to fruition last Friday. They had 288 rush yards, that outgained Parkway's total yardage as a whole. They had 0 punts. They were 6 for 6 in the red zone, and they've been struggling really in the red zone heavily this year. They won the turnover battle. So it was really just, I mean, out of their 11 drives, they had 11 total drives, and then they had nine touchdowns and scored on their first 9 possessions. So they were really starting to kind of show some consistency in that game, and it's hopefully something to build on as we get into the playoffs. One of the head quotes from Stokes, quote, "We've been practicing that way for a while. We just needed to put it on tape. Johnny was great. I think our kids kind of opened their eyes and said, we can be okay if we can just hold on to the football and do our jobs, do normal stuff, and we can be okay." And that kind of just plays off of that, again, talking about turnovers and something that they've been consistently doing. They didn't do that against Parkway. And kind of just building on Nixon again, his best game of the year. He went 14 of 17, 218 yards to the air, 4 touchdowns. He had another 80 yards on the ground, another 4 touchdowns. So he accounted for 8 of their total touchdowns. I mean, just the best game of the year for him easily. Connor Albers added another 95 yards on the ground, and a freshman, Dominic Miller, got some playing time. He had 70 yards and another touchdown as well. So their rushing attack was kind of really firing on all cylinders against the Panthers. Offensively, again, for the wide receivers, you had Jack Coney, Adam Kettner, Austin Wellman, and Phil Traska each catch touchdown passes from Johnny Nixon. From there, it was kind of, I asked him what was impressive, Stokes, of course, what was impressive kind of about the offense after seeing you guys kind of struggle. They had come into the game, I think, averaging 6 points a game. And he said, just the efficiency of our execution. We ran our offense the way our offense is supposed to be run. It was really cool to see. They've been working hard to do it, and on Friday night they did it. It was pretty cool to watch, end quote. And so defensively, they were led by Bryce Barhorst and Connor Albers. Bryce Barhorst had 5 tackles. Connor Albers had another 3.5. That kind of led the team there. Zach Fortman and Adam Kettner both had fumble recoveries, and Phil Traska also had an interception as well. So now we're kind of looking forward to Delphus Jefferson, their matchup this week. Delphus Jefferson is 0-6 this year. They're coming out of the Northwest Conference in the West Division. They're a program that kind of, if you look back historically, they're at the top of the conference, but they're in kind of a growing, rebuilding year in Minster as well. They average 24 points per game. They've given up 48 points per game, and kind of was looking up stats, and the stats kind of following from here come through 5 weeks. Most recent weeks haven't been posted yet, but they give up they average 217 rush yards per game on the ground, and then 121 through the air. So they're kind of more of a run-focused offense. Defensively, they give up a league worst 342 yards on the ground. So Minster kind of had their most successful game on the ground this past week against Parkway. They have an opportunity to build on that against another team that's kind of weak against the run this week. Players to watch offensively for them, it's Colin Bailey. It's their quarterback. He kind of leads them in all their statistical categories. He's got a conference high 800, and again, these were week 5 stats, but he had a conference high 800 rush yards and 10 total touchdowns 10 touchdowns on the ground too. So just keying in on him, making sure you kind of eliminate his ability to scramble. I mean, you got to be disciplined in those rush lanes. When he's shown he's more of a run first quarterback. He's got to think about just over north of 500 yards passing. So he's shown he can pass the ball as well, but I mean his
the heavier threat that is on the ground. Wide receiver wise, he has 3 guys that he's shown he's able to spread it around to. As far as guys that are in the top 10, I think, in the Northwest Conference in receiving, in Andrew Miller, Jacob Simmons, and Cody Bailey. So, I mean, again, and I was trying to break it down with Stokes each week like I do. I said, you got to give me something on your opponent. What are you guys kind of preparing for there? And, it harped back again to the focus on them. I'll give you a couple more quotes from them. He said, quote, honestly, the focus is on us 100%. We have a really low basement and a really high ceiling. Our kids know if we're not focused and locked in doing our jobs, we can be a really good football team. But if we're locked in, we can be a really good football team. The focus is 100% strictly on us. And then it was kind of just going back to it being the end of the regular season, and it was time to start playing good football. We talked about that last week with him, kind of previewing the week. He said, and it was kind of reiteration of the same thing this week. Quote, it's time to start playing good football. We start to see desperation and people try to advance. We've got great kids on our roster. They know what time of the year it is, and we're just excited to keep getting better. And I'm not sure we're done getting better, and that's a good feeling, end quote. And so that, to me, kind of, you just go into that practice there and talking to him yesterday before this preview, you could see kind of the energy he had, and every one of their practices, which I thought was interesting. You could see that same consistent energy out of the coaching staff, and the loud music, kids running around. This time when I talked to Stokes after that win, you could feel that energy from him as well. So you can see that last quote where he's saying, I don't think we're done getting better yet, even though we're into the playoffs in the shortened pandemic season, that he's really starting to see some growth out of this young team that, once again, only had 5 total starters back. So I think that's kind of a good sign for the program, not even just for the rest of this year, but kind of moving forward. And that kind of does it for the Minster matchup. What do we have for St. Mary's?
Yeah, sounds good. So St. Mary's will have Greenville, like I said, the number 8 seed versus the number 25 seed in Region 12. Just taking a step back from last week, St. Mary's hosted Salina, rival Salina, team across the lake, whatever you want to call them. And that was a blowout win for St. Mary's, 49-6, and that was the biggest blowout win in about 35-40 years within that rivalry. St. Mary's on offense, everything clicked. For finally, everything clicked. We've been talking about it all season long. They just been missing something on that offense. They just can't quite get going. They can't get the points, can't get the yards. Well, it all came to fruition last week. St. Mary's had season highs and first downs in the game, 24 total yards, 448. 440 of them were on the ground. Season high in points, 49, and then they had their best third down ratio, 11 of 13 on third downs. We talk about the red zone all the time, and they still, coming into that game, still needed to improve in the red zone, but the third down, which actually percentage-wise they were pretty good. I think they were around the 70-75% third down conversion rate, but it was even better in this game. It was their best showing there in that statistic. Aiden Hinkle, he had a game, 27 carries, 223 yards, a career high, and a career high 4 touchdowns in that game. Scored, I believe he scored 4 in the first 5 offensive drives for St. Mary's. And they jumped out to a quick lead. They were up 28-0 in a hurry. Their defense really did a really good job. They built on that game against Shawnee, and they took it to another level against Salina. In that game, they only allowed 129 total yards, and they didn't allow their first down until 7:12 mark of the second quarter. So they really stymied that offense with Cooper Jones and Jackson Sullivan last week. So pretty much it could be ended up being the same thing. Greenville comes in, they're a winless team. They have scored a total of 25 points all season long. They're out of the Miami Valley League, brand new league that also features Sydney. A lot of St. Mary's fans know Sydney. They used to play them week 1. It used to be a non-league rivalry. So they're in the Miami Valley League, and they just had it rough this year. They were a good team last year. They lost a lot of players. They're kind of in a rebuilding mode, obviously. On the offensive side of the ball, they average 118.7 yards per game, 64.3 on the ground, 54.3 on through the air. St. Mary's comes in as the number 1 top-ranked rush defense in the WBL, and they come in as the top-ranked rushing offense in the WBL. They averaged 262.7 yards on the ground and 309 yards total. So this could be another route for St. Mary's. They had their running clock last week against Salina in the second half. Ethan Wedding had an early third quarter touchdown to kind of activate that clock. could be seeing the same thing here against Greenville. So if St. Mary's does win, assuming they do win, they will play the winner of number 9 seeded Franklin versus Vandalia Butler. I believe Vandalia is a 24 seeded team in the Region 12. Assuming that Franklin wins, that will be a rematch of last year's playoffs, Region 12 semi or quarterfinal that was down in Franklin. St. Mary's won that game 14-10, and those two teams have a little bit of a playoff rivalry. They played each other in 16, and that season, Franklin, I believe, was the top-ranked team in that region. St. Mary's was number 4, number 3. St. Mary's blew them out of the water. It was like 55-26, something like that. They scored a season high in points in that game as well. So this team has a little bit of a history with each other, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, Franklin, coming off that loss last year at home, they'll be going to St. Mary's because St. Mary's is the number 8 seeded. They would be the higher seeded team, and that's kind of the way they're playing it right now in the postseason. They could be asking for a little bit of revenge, so we'll see what happens there. Yeah. So just to clarify things with the playoffs then, typically it was the top 8 teams in each region, and then the top 4 would host. The number 1 seed would be the number 1 seed, but the top 4 teams in the region would host. The other 4 in the bottom of the region. It's a little bit different this year. Everybody's in the playoffs, and the top 6 teams get a bye week in that first round, and then the top half of the league then will get to host their playoff games. And the first 3 games of the season, your first round, your second round, and your regional quarterfinal, I think maybe your regional semifinal, they'll all be better seeded teams will host. And then the last 3 games of the playoffs, your regional final, your state semi, and then your state final, those will be neutral site locations. Of course, we don't know those yet because they're way far in advance. So we'll see what happens. Should be a pretty good week, and hopefully we'll be back next week. Hopefully our teams win. Obviously, we'll be back with New Bremen as well.
Right.
They'll play the winner of Southeastern and Lehman Catholic, I believe. Yep. So New Bremen obviously hasn't played any of those teams the last few years, so we'll see how that ranks out. If I had a bet, I would bet Lehman Catholic would probably win. They're the better seeded team. So New Bremen, I think, would probably be able to host a couple of home games, being the number 3 seed. They have a friendly bracket there in that Region 28. So be sure to follow us on the Evening Leader, Facebook and Twitter. Obviously, the print edition, we have the preview every Thursday. That will be on Thursday's paper, St. Mary's Greenville matchup. And then keep an eye on the brackets. We'll have those throughout the week. And then, of course, every coverage that the Minster Community Post has with Marion Local, Minster, and New Bremen as we get into in Fort Loramie.
Yes, sir.
Top is number 2 seed.
Yep.
And Region 28, Marion Local is the top seed.
Yeah.
So yeah, he has an easy weekend. He just has Minster. That's about it.
Right.
So I'm Jake Dowling from the Community Post, or from the Evening Leader.
Hey,
Minster is Minster. Seth is Minster Community Post. We'll see you next week in Week 8 of Inside the Huddle. Take care. Hey readers and followers, this is Jake from the Evening Leader. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up that after recording this week's Inside the Huddle preview that Seth and I did, the Minster Athletic Department announced at around noon on Wednesday that their game against Jefferson got canceled due to injuries and players in quarantine for the coronavirus. So with that, Jefferson forfeits their game this week, and that will allow Minster then to go to the next round to play Allen East. They will play the Mustangs next Friday in the second round at Herod. In the meantime, the Wildcats did fill that game, Friday's game. It's a regular season, will be a regular season game against Pandora Gilboa. It's 7 p.m. at Pandora, just to let everybody know. Thanks, we'll see you next week.